It happens in silence, not in screams. The most unforgettable revenge is not chaos, it's evolution. A woman doesn't have to storm into a man's life to shake him. Sometimes she just has to rise without him. And at 50, that rise is unlike anything he's ever witnessed before. Because it's not a performance. It's not a tactic. It's power that has been quietly forged over years of heartbreak, betrayal, sacrifice, and becoming. Here's the truth most men don't expect to face. A woman over 50 who finally chooses herself is far more dangerous than any threat, any ultimatum, any tear. She becomes something he cannot control. She becomes the moment that replays in his head when the room gets quiet. She becomes the woman he thought he could leave behind, until he realizes he never actually could. When you finally stop trying to prove your worth, something shifts. The energy changes. You're no longer moving toward him. You're moving through life with a kind of gravity that doesn't beg to be noticed. That gravity is what makes him look back, even when he's with someone else. Why? Because men don't crave women they can control. They obsess over the women they underestimated. This is not about revenge or manipulation. This is about psychological impact. Men live with a dangerous illusion that women, especially the ones who loved them deeply, will always be waiting. That no matter how far they wander, that woman's softness will still be there when they return. But when you finally decide that the story no longer belongs to him, that illusion collapses, and when illusions collapse, obsession begins. He could be with someone new. He could post pictures pretending he's moved on. He could tell himself the past doesn't affect him. But the mind, especially the male ego, is not that simple. According to Carl Jung, the human psyche is ruled by the unconscious, not logic. What we bury doesn't disappear. It waits. And the woman he once thought he owned, emotionally, psychologically, becomes the ghost he can't silence. He starts to remember small things. The way your voice softened in the morning. The steadiness you carried when everything else around him felt unstable. The way your silence held more power than anyone else's words. At 50, you carry something a younger woman cannot fake. Emotional authority. The kind of energy that doesn't need to chase, convince, or prove. You've lived enough to understand what love is, and more importantly, what it is not. And when a man loses that kind of woman, he may run toward distraction, but he always circles back toward memory. The most powerful shift doesn't come when you demand he return. It comes when you no longer care if he does. Because a man is never truly haunted by the woman who begged to stay. He is haunted by the woman who became untouchable after he left. You see, when a woman at 50 transforms, she doesn't do it for him. She does it for herself. But the psychological effect on him is undeniable. Jung spoke often of the shadow, the hidden parts of ourselves that we suppress. For many men, the woman they pushed away becomes part of that shadow. She becomes the what-if, the regret they can't bury, the mirror they avoid, and eventually, they turn back, even if he's with someone else, even if he swore he moved on, even if pride told him not to look back. Because pride cannot silence the unconscious. When a woman stops chasing, when she reclaims her radiance, when she steps fully into her own power, she becomes the moment he compares every other woman to. And no one can compete with a woman who no longer competes at all. He will try to distract himself. He will tell himself he made the right choice. He may even convince the world that he's happy now. But every high eventually fades. Every performance eventually ends. And when the applause dies, he will hear the silence. Your silence? The silence of a woman who no longer lives in his story. And that silence will break him in a way your words never could. 2. Understand why men often come back. Even when they're with someone else, you have to understand the psychology of loss in the male. Ego men are hunters by conditioning, not just biology. They chase, they conquer. But what they conquer easily, they often devalue. What they lose unexpectedly, they obsess over. When you loved him, he got used to the certainty of your presence. That certainty became his comfort. It inflated his ego, gave him the illusion of control. Even if he didn't say it out loud, a part of him believed, she'll always be there. But then, you changed, and here's what's different when a woman over 50 walks away. She doesn't slam the door. She doesn't post desperate quotes. She doesn't chase closure. She simply stops orbiting him. And this is where the Jungian concept of the anima and animus kicks in. Jung believed that we are psychologically drawn to those who reflect our inner, unconscious parts. A woman who truly sees a man touches parts of him that he doesn't fully understand. When she disappears, or worse, evolves without him, she doesn't just leave a gap in his life. She leaves a psychic imprint on his unconscious. This is why he can be with someone new and still think of you. It's not about you being better or prettier, it's about emotional imprint. The new woman can give him attention, admiration, youth, excitement. But she cannot give him what you did, the feeling of being fully seen. And nothing haunts a man more than losing the person who saw him at his core. This is why ignoring him, detaching, or simply moving forward can shake him harder than any confrontation ever could. He doesn't feel abandoned. He feels forgotten. And that's the wound the male ego cannot tolerate. He'll try to fix it indirectly. He may send a message out of nowhere. He may bring up old jokes. He may accidentally run into you. This isn't random. It's his unconscious trying to reclaim the mirror that made him feel significant. Jung said, "What you resist not only persists, but grows in size." When a man resists his own regret, it doesn't fade. It grows. And over time, the new relationship that once felt thrilling starts to feel hollow, because no matter how many distractions he collects, none of them are you. But here's where your power lies. You do not wait. You do not perform. You do not compete with the woman he's with, because true power after 50 isn't in proving your worth. It's in living like your worth was never in question to begin with. You start doing the things you once delayed. You travel, you laugh, you glow differently. You don't rise to make him jealous. You rise because your story never ended with him. And as your light grows, his restlessness grows too. Because now you're not just the woman he left. You're the woman he can't touch anymore. This is why many men come back. Not because they suddenly grew wiser, but because they finally felt the weight of losing something real. And here's the most fascinating part. The more you stay silent, the more their mind fills in the gaps. When you stop explaining, stop updating, stop being accessible, their ego scrambles to make sense of the void, and eventually that void whispers louder than any words you could say, "She's not waiting anymore." That's when obsession takes root. Not the youthful kind of obsession that's frantic and shallow. No, this is the mature, aching, slow burn kind. The kind that settles in his bones. The kind that hits him at 2 a.m. when the house is quiet and he can't sleep, because nothing haunts a man more than the woman who walked away, not because she had to, but because she finally chose to. Here's the secret most people will never tell you. When a man begs for you to return, it's rarely because you suddenly became more beautiful, more desirable, or more needed. It's because he finally saw you without the illusion of control. The very moment you stopped orbiting his world, you became a world of your own. And that world, your world, is something he can't touch anymore. For years, he assumed your love was like air, always present, always accessible, always forgiving. He took your loyalty not as a gift, but as a constant. He never considered that you might wake up one day and choose yourself over his comfort, but now he watches you move through life with a quiet kind of power. Not bitter, not vengeful, just free. And that's the one thing a man can't ignore. Freedom terrifies him, not because he doesn't want you to be happy, but because it makes him confront the truth of his own smallness in your story. He is no longer the main character. He is a chapter, a memory, a lesson. This is where the real shift happens. When you no longer want him to come back, he starts wanting it more than ever. This isn't just emotional drama, it's psychological gravity. Carl Jung spoke about the shadow, the hidden, unacknowledged parts of ourselves that we spend a lifetime trying to outrun. For many men, the woman they took for granted becomes part of that shadow. She becomes the embodiment of regret, the symbol of what they once had but will never fully grasp again. And what lives in the shadow doesn't disappear. It pulls at them. It whispers in moments of quiet. You let something real slip away. He may try to silence it with distractions, relationships, noise. But shadows grow stronger in silence, and eventually the weight of that regret becomes heavier than his pride. That's why he reaches out. That's why he sends that late-night message. That's why he suddenly misses things he once ignored. He's not just longing for you. He's longing for the version of himself that felt safe in your love. But here's the beauty of your power. You're no longer the woman who waits for breadcrumbs. You're not a mirror for his ego anymore. You've become something far rarer. A woman who doesn't need to be chosen to know her worth, and that, more than anything else, is what makes him beg. Because men are drawn not to desperation, but to radiance, and nothing radiates brighter than a woman who finally chooses her own life. He may say the words you once longed to hear. I made a mistake. You're the one I never got. Over. No one compares to you, but now, those words no longer have the same power, because the woman who once needed his validation doesn't exist anymore. You've outgrown the cage he kept you in, and in that moment, the dynamic flips. You are no longer the one waiting at the door. He is. You are no longer the one wondering if you're enough. He is. You are no longer the one asking, will he come back? He is the one asking, will she take me back? This is not cruelty. It's not revenge. It's cosmic balance. For years you poured love into someone who didn't know its value, and now he has to live with the echo of what he lost. Here's what's truly extraordinary about being over 50. You understand time differently. You know love isn't about chasing someone who cannot see you. It's about becoming the kind of woman who can walk away with grace, knowing her worth was never dependent on being chosen. Your silence becomes your language. Your absence becomes his mirror. Your growth becomes the lesson he never saw coming. And when he finally comes back, and yes, many do, you don't need to prove anything anymore, because the truth is, a man who took your presence for granted will always be haunted by your absence. Jung once said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. For him, losing you becomes that moment of awakening. The unconscious becomes conscious. The shadow steps into the light, and he realizes too late that what he thought was ordinary was once in a lifetime. And here's the deeper layer, the part most people never talk about. When he begs for you to return, it's not just about love. It's about his identity. He wants to reclaim the piece of himself that felt powerful, wanted, adored in your presence. But that power is not his anymore. It's yours, because when a woman rises after 50, she doesn't rise to be taken back. She rises to never be diminished again. You've learned how to stand alone without collapsing. You've learned how to love without losing yourself. You've learned how to be the storm and the calm after it. And now, when he comes back, whether with apologies, grand gestures, or trembling words, you hold the choice. That's your power. Some women may choose to let him back in. Others may smile, close the door gently, and keep walking. Both are powerful, because what matters isn't whether he returns. What matters is you're not waiting anymore. And when you're no longer waiting, he becomes the one who can't rest. He becomes the one who checks his phone in the middle of the night, the one who drives past familiar streets, hoping for a glimpse, the one who scrolls through your life, realizing it goes on without him. And that realization, quiet, piercing, irreversible, is what makes him beg. Not because you begged first, but because you finally stopped. This is the paradox of power that Jung understood so well. When you stop chasing something, it often starts chasing you, not because of magic, but because energy shifts when you finally reclaim yourself. So if you do this after 50, if you stop begging, stop explaining, stop waiting, if you let silence become your strength, he will feel it, even if he's with someone else, even if he pretends he's moved on, even if years pass, because some women are not eras. They are empires, and he will spend the rest of his life trying to find what he already lost. You'll just keep rising, because your worth was never in his hands. It was and always will be in yours.